Chelsea play Wednesday against Real Madrid, don't you?
Yes, it's a problem. I mean, they've got a game on Sunday against Inter Milan, and then they've got a week off till the next whole week off to the next fixture.
Just as I said, they seem to have been there longer than ever this time around. Someone who's been watching it all unfold and can give us a sort of report on the teams he's seen in action is Ben Jacobs. Good afternoon, Ben.
Good afternoon. It does feel like we've been here forever. 2.5 weeks for Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, as Andy says, they've got a week to acclimatise. But are we imagining this, or have these teams been out longer? Have they been playing more and more football over there, maybe than they have ever before?
I think it just feels like longer because some of them came the week before Chelsea but have now left, and others like Chelsea are running on for a few more days before returning. So there's been Premier League clubs in different tournaments, and actually those from the EFL as well, like Wrexham for the best part of 3.5 weeks. But the longest tour is 2.5 weeks, and that's Chelsea and also Manchester City, who of course beat Chelsea 4-2 and are now back home for the Community Shields. There's different organisers, there's concurrent tournaments, there's both coasts. Chelsea started in Santa Clara near San Francisco, then moved to Atlanta, and now they're going to be traveling this afternoon over here to Charlotte, where I am, and they finish off against Real Madrid. And it's very useful for the brand. We wait and see whether all of the travel, the different training facilities is conducive to a positive pre-season. But Chelsea, despite some of their results, are relatively content so far. But the real test will be that first Premier League game against the champions Manchester City.
Yes, I mean, there have been some alarming signs. I mean, the first 2 goals they gave away Saturday were utterly pathetic, weren't they? And if they're going to be doing that...
Well, talk us through how do they give the goals away?
Well, if you give Erling Haaland the ball in your own penalty area, playing out from the back twice, you're going to suffer.
Right. I mean, Maresca's been saying this, Ben. He's been saying that the guys are getting used to it, that they're getting used to his style of play. So there's going to be some teething problems. So what have you made of what you've seen?
Yeah, Chelsea look better going forwards than defensively, as you rightly say. They've given away some sloppy goals. This passing out from the back is going to take some time to get used to. And the other thing as well is just some key decisions. Who are the 2 centre-back pairings going to be? Well, for example, it'd be Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana. You've got Tosin that's arrived. Benoit Badiashile has played some games as well. Reece James is banned for the first 4 games of the season, which means Malo Gusto will probably be the right back, but he played left back against Manchester City. There's a question mark over Ben Chilwell and where his position fits into this system. You've got Mark Cucurella, who probably will be the starting left back, but is not with the tour. Cole Palmer as well, off the back of the Euros, is not here in America either. So Chelsea are a bit of a work in progress, but they look better going forwards than they do defensively. And then Manchester City haven't had the best results in pre-season either, but of course nobody's really questioning them because it's just Pep and they're missing, I would say, 70% of their stars. So for Maresca, it's about creating that identity, and you can see what he's trying to do, but there's a long way to go between now and Manchester City if Chelsea are to get it right and ultimately get 3 what would be big points to get a statement win on the opening game of the season.
But isn't it daft when you won your last 6 games of the season to be a work in progress going into pre-season? It's ridiculous, actually, what they've done, Chelsea. But let's not talk about them because they're really annoying.
Let's move on to City and some of the stories around City. I see Pep's been very pleased with the way Jack Grealish has been playing, and before these games there was a bit of talk about whether he may need to move on to get regular football, and Pep was throwing down a bit of a challenge saying, see the Jack of a couple of seasons ago, but he has been pleased. He said he's looked really good.
Yeah, really good, hungry, fit as well. And I think Pep Guardiola's always liked Jack Grealish. We've heard all kinds of reports, including about a return to Aston Villa. But the reality of the situation is that Pep really feels that Grealish can continue to not only shine at Manchester City, but become more and more integral. And pre-season so far has been very good for him. I think Oscar Bobb and James McAtee are 2 other players that have really benefited from this pre-season. There's been some suggestions of Chelsea maybe being in for Bobb, but that's going to be a difficult one to prize him away because the player seemingly has been guaranteed more and more minutes. And Pep also confirmed after their 4-2 win over Chelsea that McAtee would get some minutes and be part of the first team squad as well. So the advantage for Manchester City, unlike, say, Chelsea, is because so many of these senior players are not with the squad in America, we've seen far more academy products and fringe players and young City stars getting minutes and the opportunity to force their way into the reckoning. And that's why I think Pep Guardiola less concerned about some of the results. Chelsea was their first victory on this pre-season tour. Celtic put 4 past Manchester City and beat them as well. But Guardiola very pleased so far in what will be a long season for Manchester City, because remember, Man City and Chelsea both here in America, both playing in the Club World Cup too. So they start and finish in America. America. And if all goes according to plan for both teams in terms of the domestic and European competitions plus the Club World Cup, it might be an 80-game season.
You could have a championship team in the Club World Cup. Villa have lost a few as well, haven't they? Some strange results as well. I mean, it is pre-season. I suppose we have to say that. But,
just going back to
Manchester United, because
I just want to ask one more on City, if I can. Julian Alvarez again. Pep's been talking about him. He's been playing in the Olympics and the Copa America, and there's been a few stories. He's frustrated. He's not getting football, but Pep Guardiola seems to think. He says it'll be fine. We'll get together and we'll have a chat. And he doesn't seem too stressed by it all.
No, but as we know with Pep, if the player, Cole Palmer to Chelsea being one example, says that they want to leave, then Guardiola is very understanding. He thinks about his players personally as well as professionally. And we still don't know what Julian Alvarez is thinking. He played a lot of games. I think it was 31 of 38 Premier League starts for him last season, but Erling Haaland was out for some of those games. So Alvarez is trying to understand whether or not the bar that was set last season is going to continue. And if it isn't, then he might be persuaded to go elsewhere still, despite what Guardiola thinks. And what we know is that Atletico Madrid are already in early stage club-to-club negotiations with Manchester City. They want to pay a package of 65 million euros. Manchester City are wanting 80 million euros or 70 million pounds as a bare minimum. It's early stages. There's no bid yet, but that could develop in the coming days. And PSG might still be there as well, especially if they're not able to get Victor Osimhen. So Pep's calm about the Alvarez situation. He was very bullish. He's our player. No news. But what we can say concurrent to that is Atleti and Manchester City are in direct but early club-to-club talks.
What about Manchester United? Because to me, it looks like it's going to be more of the same this season. I mean, they've already picked up injuries, which was a big problem for them last year.
Got some more yesterday, didn't they?
And they just Ten Hag talks a good game, but the team don't play a good game.
Yeah, I think it's a strange one, isn't it? Because 12 months ago, they beat Liverpool and everyone got all excited and they didn't make a good start to the season. Then this time out, they lost 3-0 to Liverpool. They looked outclassed, but it is only pre-season. So the bigger thing for Ten Hag is taking that FA Cup win and using that as the momentum and almost the catalyst rather than whatever happens in pre-season, plus whatever they can do in the window. We know that Mazraoui and De Ligt are two players that Manchester United is still working on. The big story is Lenny Yoro being injured and potentially out for 3 months. There'll be a scan when he gets home, but that's a big blow and it only increases the urgency to bring in another centre-back. And then there's all of these other sort of movements that we thought were going to happen already but haven't yet. Casemiro and Sancho, even though he's cleared the air with Ten Hag, that might create a little bit of squad space and budget for Manchester United to move in the market. Rasmus Højlund's got a hamstring injury. He's out for 5 more weeks, 6 in total, but one of those weeks has passed and his goals are going to be important as well. And then how does Rashford react to not going to the Euros? Has he been able to focus only on Manchester United to rediscover some of his own form? And if he gets scoring, Manchester United will be a completely different proposition. But it has been a bit of a hit and miss pre-season. Of course, it wasn't just America for Manchester United. They did beat Rangers before they travelled. They lost to Arsenal, but beat them on penalties, which tells you how these tournaments kind of work, where some of them just had exhibition shootouts regardless of the result. And then they beat Betis and lost to Liverpool. And now, of course, they come back early because they've got the Community Shield. And if they can win that, then pre-season will be quickly forgotten.
There's all these stories suggesting Fabio Carvalho could be off to Southampton, Ben, but he's been doing pretty well on the pre-season tour for Liverpool. What have you made of them under Slot? Does it feel different? Can you see the join post Klopp in terms of style?
Yeah, I think so. Stylistically, it's going to be relatively attacking and wide, and it's going to have a good transition between Klopp and Slot. It's been quite a discreet and private pre-season. He's not done a lot of talking on a Slot, and we know that Liverpool have been quite quiet in the window. Some of their priorities, for example, are to make sure that Virgil van Dijk stays. They want to extend Trent Alexander-Arnold and keep some of these young players that came through due to injuries under Jurgen Klopp and make sure that they are integrated. And so far, so good. Liverpool fans may argue it's been a quiet window, but we know how discreet Liverpool like to work. And results-wise, they've looked very organised, very solid. It's been a clear identity, and it's been a smoother transition, I would say, compared to Enzo Maresca at Chelsea. With Carvalho specifically, I think Liverpool are very reluctant to sell. They see his big potential. They might be persuaded to do a loan, but he's done enough in pre-season to force his way into the reckoning. And the offer from Southampton was nowhere near high enough coupled with that fact that Liverpool are not desperate to sell, and it might mean that it's a difficult one for them to pull off, and he could be one of the beneficiaries from pre-season under Slot to maybe get more integration into the Liverpool first team rather than going elsewhere.
Not changing the squad with a new manager is a very good idea, because too many changes is disruptive.
Absolutely. You mentioned Villa, Andy, and they've lost all 3 of their matches.
Yeah, and they even lost to Columbus Crew, and we beat them. They must be terrible.
Yeah, it's been a weird tour. Again, you don't read too much into it. They've got a good squad. They've added to it. But what have you made of them?
Yeah, I think Aston Villa, as you say, haven't had the results. They were thoroughly outplayed in a friendly that I saw against Leipzig. And in addition to that, as you rightly say, they lost to Club America, who Chelsea beat very comfortably. They've not scored that many goals. The worst result on paper was a 4-1 loss to Columbus Crew. But I think it's about Unai Emery alternating his squad and seeing more players, because heading into this season, they're going to have to balance a lot with Champions League football. And that's the big difference. When you're a Pep or an Emery coming off the back of a big season, there's maybe less of a meltdown during pre-season compared to a Manchester United, where people might soon forget about the FA Cup final win and say we're back where we started, or Chelsea, who are building again after Maurizio Pochettino. So Villa are relatively calm. They've had a good window. They didn't desperately want to lose Douglas Luiz, but they've been able to bring in Amadou Onana. They still love Joao Felix because Moussa Diaby's gone to Saudi Arabia. So there's a few little things for them to do. They may still resolve the future of John Duran as well, who wants more game time, and Unai Emery thinks the player needs to be a little bit more patient. But I think Villa will be in good shape, and that might be one of the examples of where pre-season results mean absolutely nothing.
And just a quick one on Arsenal as well. They've come back early. They've got a couple of games at home, a couple of friendlies to build up to the start of the season. What's the situation with them? What have you made of them on this tour?
Yeah, pretty impressed by Arsenal. They look fit and sharp and hungry to obviously further narrow the gap on Manchester City and try and win that elusive Premier League title under Mikel Arteta. They lost a game that I saw them play against Liverpool by 2-1, but Kai Havertz got a goal in that game and they created plenty of chances. So that was still a relative positive. And as I said earlier, they were one of the teams that came out to America earlier than Chelsea, which is why it feels like the sides have been out here forever. They played against Bournemouth, for example. Fabio Vieira's done quite well on this tour, so that might allow him even more game time at the club as well. And Arsenal will come back and do what they always do. They'll stay calm, they'll stay discreet, they'll look to strengthen in small areas in the market. Declan Rice will be a big factor when he obviously recovers from the Euros and can play 6 or 8. And then we wait and see whether Mikel Merino gets over the line. Calafiori's created a real buzz. He spoke to the media immediately after arriving, and the fact that he can play left centre-back or left-back is that kind of versatility that Mikel Arteta is looking for. And then the big question mark, I think, for Arsenal will not be about pre-season, but what they do in the next 3 weeks as far as the striker is concerned. Marseille want Eddie Nketiah. Arsenal still want to bring in a traditional striker. Finding that profile could be the difference between winning the Premier League or not.
I think it is. That's what they need, Arsenal.
They do need a striker, don't they? Ben, good stuff. Thanks ever so much. We'll catch up with you soon.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.